London in the Raw struck British cinemas in 1964 with all the subtlety of a sledgehammer against polite society's veneer. This exploitation documentary promised viewers an unfiltered glimpse into the capital's shadowy underbelly, strip clubs, gambling establishments, and the type of nightlife that respectable Londoners pretended didn't exist. But within months of its debut, the film had virtually disappeared from circulation, transforming into little more than a whispered legend among exploitation cinema devotees. The Vanishing Act wasn't coincidental. British censors had taken a harsh stance against the documentary's unflinching depiction of London's darker territories, while audiences proved unexpectedly uncomfortable about confronting their city's grittier realities. Disappointing box office performance sealed the fate. Distributors swiftly withdrew the film from theaters, and print seemed to dissolve into thin air. For over 4 decades, London in the Raw survived primarily in the recollections of those fortunate few who'd witnessed it during its brief theatrical existence. Then arrived 2007, when a routine cataloging initiative at the British Film Institute revealed something remarkable. Buried deep within their archives, researchers uncovered a pristine print of the long-vanished documentary, impeccably preserved, as though awaiting the perfect moment to re-emerge. The discovery ignited immediate fascination among film scholars, who recognized the footage as a priceless time capsule of 1960s London. Restoration work commenced almost instantly, revitalizing this forgotten fragment of British cinema. What surfaced wasn't merely entertainment, it was historical documentation of a London that had been intentionally erased. The film's resurrection has encouraged academic communities to reassess exploitation cinema's function as unintentional social chronicler, preserving moments and locations that mainstream documentaries wouldn't dare approach. Private Property emerged from the American independent film scene in 1960, like a lightning bolt no one wanted to acknowledge. Leslie Stevens' psychological thriller pushed boundaries mainstream Hollywood wouldn't touch, weaving a disturbing tale of manipulation and moral decay that left audiences squirming. Its provocative exploration of sexual exploitation and psychological violence proved too inflammatory for 1960s sensibilities. Distributors quickly pulled it from circulation. What followed was decades of cinematic exile. Private Property became film school legend, referenced in academic papers, but impossible to actually watch. The few who remembered it spoke in hushed tones about its raw intensity and uncompromising vision, but finding a print seemed hopeless. The film was extremely rare, but not completely erased. Some prints and references survived. Enter David Marriott, a film historian obsessed with lost cinema. Marriott spent years chasing leads, following paper trails through defunct distribution companies and abandoned storage facilities. His persistence finally paid off in 2015 when he tracked down a surviving print in a private collector's vault, someone who had preserved the film without realizing its cultural significance. Restoring the film proved as challenging as the search. Decades of neglect had damaged the print, requiring meticulous frame-by-frame reconstruction. When Private Property finally premiered at the 2016 Cannes Film Festival, critics were stunned. Some argued this wasn't just a recovered curiosity, it was a genuinely groundbreaking work that had influenced a generation of filmmakers who'd absorbed its impact without ever seeing it. The rediscovery has since been hailed as one of the most significant events in American independent cinema archaeology. The Queen captured something extraordinary in 1967, a drag pageant that would become a cultural artifact of immense historical value, then vanish into obscurity for nearly half a century. Frank Simon's documentary chronicled the Miss All-America Camp Beauty pageant, offering an unvarnished glimpse into gay culture during an era when such visibility could destroy lives. The film's brief theatrical run in 1968 drew minimal attention from mainstream audiences, who weren't ready to confront this vibrant subculture existing in their midst. After its lackluster commercial performance, the Queen simply evaporated from public consciousness. Prints disappeared, distributors moved on, and the film became a casualty of societal indifference. For decades, it existed only in the memories of those who had witnessed its original screenings, a phantom documentary that scholars knew existed but couldn't access. The breakthrough came in 2012 through pure serendipity. Archivists at Outfest and the UCLA Film and Television Archive discovered a 16mm print that had been preserved almost by accident. These preservationists immediately recognized the footage's significance. This wasn't just entertainment, but historical documentation of pre-Stonewall gay life that had survived against all odds. Restoration efforts began immediately, with specialists working to salvage decades-old footage through painstaking technical processes. The meticulous work revealed intimate moments between pageant contestants, candid conversations about identity and survival, and performances that radiated defiance in the face of widespread persecution. When The Queen finally received its 2019 re-release, audiences discovered a time capsule that provided crucial context for understanding how far gay rights had evolved, and how much courage it had taken to simply exist authentically during those dangerous years. Night Tide drifted into cinematic limbo through the cruel mathematics of independent filmmaking, too strange for mainstream audiences, too polished for exploitation circuits. Curtis Harrington's atmospheric horror romance starring Dennis Hopper had everything going against it in 1961, a minuscule budget, unconventional narrative structure, and a haunting ambiguity that defied easy categorization. The film's limited theatrical run barely registered with distributors, who quickly abandoned it when box office receipts failed to justify continued promotion. What followed was a particularly frustrating form of cinematic death, the kind where everyone involved knew something special had been created, but couldn't prove it existed. Harrington watched his carefully crafted mood piece vanish from circulation, while Hopper's early starring role became a footnote that film historians couldn't verify. The movie existed in a strange purgatory, referenced in academic papers but impossible to screen or study. The rescue came through pure chance in the late 1990s when a 35mm print surfaced in a Los Angeles storage facility. It's believed that someone had preserved the solitary copy without realizing they were safeguarding a piece of American independent cinema history. The Academy Film Archive immediately recognized the discovery's significance and launched a comprehensive restoration project. Their painstaking work revealed a film that had been decades ahead of its time, a psychological thriller that anticipated the art house horror movement by years. When Night Tide finally received its proper reissue, critics discovered that Harrington had created something genuinely innovative, a movie that used supernatural elements to explore psychological isolation with remarkable sophistication. The rediscovery sparked renewed interest in early American independent horror, proving that some films simply arrive before their audiences are ready to receive them. Shirley Clarke's The Connection struck at the heart of American moral panic with surgical precision. Her unflinching portrayal of heroin addiction among jazz musicians challenged every sanitized narrative about substance use that 1960s society preferred to maintain. Based on Jack Gelber's controversial stage play, the film refused to moralize or sensationalize, instead presenting addiction as a grinding reality that destroyed lives without dramatic flourishes or redemptive arcs. This artistic integrity became its commercial death sentence. New York's censorship board swiftly suppressed the film, deeming its frank depiction of substance use morally corrupting. The ban erased The Connection from American screens, and distributors abandoned hope of recouping their investment. Clarke's groundbreaking work, seamlessly blending documentary realism with fictional narrative, vanished into legal limbo, existing only in the memories of those who had witnessed its brief theatrical run. For 4 decades, The Connection remained a ghost in cinema history, referenced in academic discussions about censorship but impossible to study or screen. Scholars knew Clarke had created something revolutionary, but couldn't access the evidence to support claims about her innovative techniques or the film's cultural significance. Salvation arrived in the early 2000s when a lone 35mm print was discovered, mislabeled and forgotten, in the Royal Belgian Film Archive. Restoration specialists recognized its historical importance and began meticulous preservation work. The 2012 re-release revealed a masterpiece suppressed at the height of its relevance. Critics found Clarke had pioneered techniques, improvisational direction, jazz-influenced editing, that felt decades ahead of their time. The film's rediscovery sparked crucial conversations about women directors erased from cinema history, proving that some artistic achievements survive censorship through sheer persistence. The Party's Over arrived in 1965 as Guy Hamilton's unflinching portrait of London's dissolute youth culture, starring Oliver Reed in a performance so raw and disturbing that it would trigger one of the most severe censorship battles in British cinema history. Hamilton, fresh from directing the first Goldfinger, had crafted something far removed from his Bond work, a brutal examination of privilege, violence, and moral decay that made the swinging 60s look more like a downward spiral than a cultural awakening. The British Board of Film Censors didn't just reject the film, they launched an all-out offensive against it. Scenes depicting sexual violence, substance use, and Reed's character's increasingly erratic behavior were deemed so offensive that the board demanded edits so sweeping they would have dismantled the entire narrative. Rather than dilute his vision, Hamilton opted to withdraw the film from British cinemas before most audiences could witness its incendiary content. This move transformed The Party's Over from a commercial release into a forbidden relic, existing only in heavily edited international versions that diverged significantly from Hamilton's original intent. For decades, film historians believed the complete version had been lost forever, another victim of censorship's heavy hand. The surviving prints shown in European art houses offered only fragments of the story, prompting critics to wonder what had been removed and why the censors had responded so aggressively to Hamilton's work. The breakthrough came by sheer chance when an uncut print surfaced during a private estate sale in the early 2000s. This discovery allowed restoration experts to finally reconstruct Hamilton's full vision, revealing a film now hailed as a prophetic critique of British class structures and the darker side of youth culture, a work whose suppression only amplified its ability to disturb and provoke decades later. Nicholas Ray's The Savage Innocence emerged in 1960 as an ambitious Arctic drama starring Anthony Quinn as an Inuit hunter navigating the collision between traditional life and Western civilization. Despite Quinn's star power and Ray's reputation as the visionary behind Rebel Without a Cause, the film encountered immediate distribution hurdles that would doom its commercial prospects in America and Britain. Distributors hesitated over the unconventional narrative structure and Quinn's controversial casting as an indigenous character, leading to limited theatrical runs that barely registered with Western audiences. While the film faded into near-total obscurity across America and Britain, it found unexpected appreciation in European and Asian markets, where audiences responded more favorably to Ray's poetic exploration of cultural displacement and environmental themes. This geographic divide in reception would prove crucial to the film's survival, as international prints remained in circulation long after Western copies had vanished from distribution. According to film historians, the film's revival began with an extraordinary discovery at a Japanese university archive, where scholars uncovered a pristine 35mm print that had been quietly preserved for decades. Reportedly, this find initiated an international restoration project that revealed Ray's original vision in remarkable clarity, complete with sequences that had been removed from most Western releases. Some sources suggest the restored version premiered at major film festivals across Europe and Asia, prompting critics to reevaluate Ray's late career work. This rediscovery highlighted how cultural context shapes film reception and underscored the essential role international archives play in safeguarding cinema history, proving that sometimes a film's true audience lies far from where it was first dismissed. Shirley Clarke's The Cool World stands as one of cinema's most authentic portrayals of 1960s Harlem, yet many critics argue that its stark depiction of urban poverty and systemic racism made it too provocative for mainstream distribution. The 1963 drama, adapted from Warren Miller's novel, followed a teenage gang member navigating the harsh realities of ghetto life with a documentary-style realism that reportedly unsettled audiences. Film historians suggest that major distributors rejected the film's raw approach, relegating it to limited art house runs before it disappeared from circulation. The film's vanishing act wasn't solely due to poor box office performance. Complex rights issues and the loss of the original negative created a perfect storm of obscurity. Some observers note that Clarke, already facing challenges as a female director tackling controversial material, watched her groundbreaking work fade into invisibility as legal entanglements blocked any revival efforts. For decades, film scholars suggest that The Cool World survived only in academic discussions and the memories of those who caught its brief original run. Salvation arrived through an unexpected discovery in the late 1990s when archivists at the University of Wisconsin uncovered a pristine 35mm print buried deep within their film library. This lone surviving copy became the foundation for a meticulous restoration by the Academy Film Archive, which finally returned Clarke's vision to theaters in the 2010s. Many critics argue that the restoration revealed not just a lost film, but a vital chapter in African American cinema history, one that challenged stereotypes and offered an unfiltered look at urban life that reportedly inspired generations of filmmakers who followed Clarke's fearless lead. Samuel Fuller's The Naked Kiss stunned audiences in 1964 with his jarring opening scene of a bald prostitute attacking her pimp with a telephone, setting the tone for one of cinema's most uncompromising explorations of moral duplicity. The film's provocative themes, prostitution, sexual violence, and small-town corruption, proved too incendiary for major distributors, who largely abandoned the project after its initial release. Fuller's stark portrayal of a sex worker trying to rebuild her life as a nurse in a seemingly wholesome town defied every convention of mainstream cinema, resulting in poor theatrical distribution and the film's gradual disappearance. By the 1980s, The Naked Kiss had become a ghost among film scholars, discussed in academic circles but nearly impossible to view. The few remaining prints were scattered and deteriorating, leaving Fuller's legacy to rest primarily on his war films rather than his most subversive work. Many critics speculated that this film represented Fuller's most personal commentary on American society's capacity for self-deception, yet audiences had no way to judge for themselves. Rumor has it that the film's revival came through sheer luck in the 1990s when a projectionist clearing out an abandoned Texas drive-in discovered a nearly pristine 35mm print tucked away in the projection booth. While the exact source of the restoration print remains undocumented, the film was painstakingly restored and released by the Criterion Collection in 2007. This revival sparked renewed critical interest, with scholars finally able to appreciate Fuller's raw, unfiltered vision and solidify his reputation as one of cinema's most fearless provocateurs. Michael Powell's Peeping Tom emerged in 1960 as one of cinema's most unsettling explorations of voyeurism and violence, only to be immediately dismantled by censors who deemed its psychological depth too dangerous for public viewing. The British Board of Film Censors demanded sweeping cuts to scenes depicting the protagonist's camera-assisted murders, while American distributors removed significant sequences that delved into the killer's disturbed psyche. These altered versions differed substantially from Powell's original vision, turning a nuanced psychological thriller into a fragmented exploitation film that critics lambasted upon release. The film's commercial failure effectively ended Powell's career, but the greater loss was what audiences never saw. The complete version Powell had carefully constructed vanished as distributors relied solely on the censored prints. Some have speculated that by the 1970s, film scholars debated whether Powell's original cut had ever truly existed, with some suggesting the director's claims about a longer, more coherent version were attempts to defend his reputation after the critical backlash. The film's resurrection came from an unexpected source in the late 1990s when archivists at the Deutsche Cinemathek in Berlin discovered several unmarked film canisters containing pristine English-language reels of Peeping Tom. These German prints, apparently imported before the censorship edits, preserve Powell's full vision in remarkable detail. The restoration process revealed deleted scenes that significantly enriched the film's psychological complexity, particularly moments exploring the killer's traumatic childhood that had been missing from the edited versions. This rediscovery redefined Peeping Tom from a notorious flop into a landmark of psychological horror, with critics finally able to appreciate Powell's ahead-of-its-time examination of media violence and viewer complicity, ideas that would shape horror cinema for generations. If you've enjoyed this video, please leave a like and comment. Also consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell to get notified of our new videos each week. Thanks for watching.